Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 884 of the Juicebox Podcast. Erika Forsyth is back today, and she's, I was going to say talking with me, but this conversation took a turn somewhere, and I got very passionate, so I'm not sure how much Erika spoke. Anyway, we're talking about how people speak to each other online and some other online eccentricities, like complaining about seeing other people wearing CGMs or using GLP-1s and stuff like that. Anyway, it's a spirited conversation. I invite you to listen. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. If you have type 1, are the caregiver of type 1, and a U.S. resident, then I need you to go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and complete the survey. That's it, t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Complete the survey. It helps people living with type 1. It'll help you. It'll help me. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Today's podcast is also brought to you by Touched by Type 1. Now, this is a fantastic organization helping people with type 1 diabetes. It's an org, and they just want you to check out what they're doing. Hit them up on Facebook, Instagram, and of course, at touchedbytype1.org. I'll be speaking at one of their huge events later this year. Go check it out, touchedbytype1.org. The podcast is also sponsored today by Omnipod. Now, Omnipod makes the Omnipod DASH and the Omnipod 5. So there is a tubeless insulin pump for whatever you desire. The DASH puts you in charge. It's completely manual. You make the decisions. But that Omnipod 5, it's automated. It runs off an algorithm with the Dexcom G6. It's going to make a lot of the decisions for you. Check them out. Get started today at omnipod.com/juicebox. There are links to all of the sponsors in the show notes of the audio player you're listening in right now and at juiceboxpodcast.com. But you can always just type them into a browser. Hey, Erika, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Good to see you.
You as well.
Good to be here.
I think we'll jump right in because, you were on the schedule for today, but we just decided last night what to talk about. And I think we're going to kind of commingle two ideas together. I don't know where to start. Which of the two things do you think we start with?
Let's start with how to communicate online.
Online. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
How do we effectively and appropriately and compassionately communicate?
Yes. I have no training about how to talk to people. All I have is that back when blogs weren't a thing, I had a blog. So I was learning to communicate with people I couldn't see. And you can say it's not that deep, but it kind of is. Like, you have to learn how to talk to people in a way that they can receive it, right? Like, so no matter what you're saying, you're not sugarcoating it and you're not holding back, but you're saying it in a way that doesn't just light them on fire before you present them with the topic, right? And I'm sure as we're talking, we're going to come up with a lot of examples of that. But I learned how to do that. The blog was pretty darn popular, so people must have accepted my writing pretty well. When I went to the podcast, it's the same thing. Like, I'm talking to a wall most of the time, or I'm talking to a person I don't even see. And you're developing a conversation that people can hear from the outside and not brusque up against, not be like, right. I'm upset by this part of what you said or that part of what you said. That's on purpose for me. Like, real Scott in real life, isn't this nice? and I don't mean to other people, mainly to my family, I mean, but I don't think about when I'm interacting in my personal life, I don't think about, oh, I want to make sure this is accessible to everybody. I'm more about like, let me get out my thoughts and my feelings and how this impacts me and that kind of stuff. Anyway, it wasn't really until I launched the Facebook group that I really started seeing it. Some people don't know how to talk. They just don't know how to get their point across without making somebody angry. And there's a difference between doing it on purpose. Like some people run into a thread and they're like, ha, 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 and then they run out because they want to see the fight, right? But that's not often what happens. Often what happens is just people just see the world from a very like me-centric perspective. And I don't know if they put much thought into how is this going to resonate with the person who's hearing it. And then it starts weird fights that it's interesting where they go. So I want to start with how to talk to people. And there's probably nobody better to ask than you. Like how, and I'm sure what we're going to talk about is going to be beyond the internet and work in people's real lives as well. So please.
Yes, I think, in grad school, we learn a lot about communication in marriage and family therapy. And oftentimes when people land in my office, it is around communication. And one of the things that we learn is this image of there's a sender. As when you're communicating with someone, there's the sender and then there's the receiver of information. And so envisioning yourself, if you are the sender, you are communicating like as if in a letter. And you've written your message, you're sending it in a letter, and you're not always sure how the receiver is going to receive that message. Is the receiver of your letter, so to speak, have they had a horrible day? Have they had an incredible morning? Did they have sleep? Have they eaten? Right. So you're delivering a message as a sender, not knowing how it's going to land, and that is often what causes conflict.
Yeah.
In verbal and in-person verbal communication.
And I think there's a way. I think what some people hear, like the more I don't know what to say. There are going to be some people that hear that and go, oh, well, you're just saying what you don't mean so it doesn't upset anybody. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying you can get your point across without everybody hating each other and yelling and screaming and everything just coming up like octaves up. And I just think that's, I don't know why it's not a consideration. Like, why is it so important for me to say what I think that I don't care how you feel? That's a fascinating aspect of this to me. So I guess on some level, you have to be concerned with your audience and how they're going to feel.
Yes. And I agree. I'm not talking about be inauthentic with how you're feeling, because that you can read through that. So yes, it is. We do want to encourage authentic, honest communication. But if you are not thinking about how your messaging is going to land, then it may never land. the point that you're trying to cross, or to what the point you're trying to make may never land well if you're not thinking about the tone, the audience, where are you in your emotional and physical space?
Right.
Are you tired, hungry, exhausted, stressed?
Oh, you have no idea how many people I see start a post and they're ranting and raving, but they'll be like, at the end they're like, I'm sorry, I had a bad day. I'm like, well, then why are you doing this? Like, what is, like, if you need to get it out, go scream into a pillow. Why are you screaming on the internet? So they even know. Erika, they know. They're like, I already know that my perspective is skewed because I've had a bad day. So I'm just still going to come in here and shit on the floor and light it on fire and watch all of you try to deal with it. Because that's what happens then, is there are some people, then everybody's personalities come out, right? There are people who want to pick apart your point, take the opposite side, play devil's advocate. There are people who get mad and just launch back with anger. There are some people who are, and I'm assuming their parents were alcoholics, they want very badly to stop the fight, right? Like, and so there's like all of that, and all these voices come together, and it's fascinating to watch none of them understand where the other came from. And And it's fascinating to watch each one of them not care how it lands, because it goes on both ways. You can see, if you step back, you can see what people mean. It's not what they said. And that's interesting, and then
Yes.
when you try to reframe, it can sound, what's the word I want? You have to be able to try to reframe without insulting them or making them think that you're going, oh, okay, but have you thought of it this way? Like, that's not the way to go, obviously. This is going to be all over the place. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I've seen a lot of this. So,
well, I think a couple of things that are lost in online, and we're talking about maybe some of these longer threads, right, in the Facebook community or anywhere online. That's what's lost is you can't pick up the tone necessarily, although sometimes you can.
Mm-hmm.
You can't read the other person's facial expression, body language, and so you're posting how you're feeling in the moment. And I think, just like what I would advise in person, if you're coming in hot and bothered and tired and all the things, step away. Even write the post, write it down. Don't click post yet. Walk away, take some deep breaths, go eat, go take a walk, and then come back and reread it.
Yeah.
And say, is that really what I wanted to post? Because
to your point earlier, if you're putting all this effort into saying something to someone or writing something down, showing it to them, then you must want to get them to a level of your understanding, right? You're trying to impart how you see something. If you're going to run into the room and light the whole thing on fire, no one's going to take your point. And so if it's really important to you, then deliver it in a way that will be actionable for them, that they can actually stop and go, oh, that's not a bad idea. Like, that does make sense. You can deliver it that way. By the way, these things help you having 504 conversations with your kids' schools. Like, these things help a lot. They're not just for this kind of communication. It's every kind of human interaction where you're just trying to get across how you feel. And I think that's why the fights happen. I think that when you try to say something and someone else doesn't understand it, there's a level of frustration that comes up inside of you that's it's difficult to deal with because you don't feel heard. And then, depending on how you grew up, that might hit you really poorly. And then you kind of get lit up like a firecracker a little bit too. Like, not being heard is a trigger. I don't use the word trigger. Not being heard is a trigger for many people. Gvoke HypoPen has no visible needle and is a premixed autoinjector of glucagon for treatment of very low blood sugar in adults and kids with diabetes ages 2 and above. Find out more. Go to gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with insulinoma or pheochromocytoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk. My daughter has been wearing and using an Omnipod tubeless insulin pump since she was 4 years old. And she's a freshman in college now, about to be 19 this summer. So that's a long time, right? I don't want to do the math, but roughly it's over 15 years. And Arden has been wearing an Omnipod every second of every day for the last 15 years. It is a friend in this journey. It is dependable and valuable and easy to use. And it is not a detriment. I mean, it's not in your way. There's no tubing. You can wear it when you swim. You can wear it when you're working out, in the shower. You don't have to take it off for anything. It really is absolutely fantastic. Now, Omnipod has 2 different versions that you can check into, right? They have the Omnipod DASH if you want to just put your settings in and make all your decisions yourself. Fantastic, fantastic pod. And they have the Omnipod 5. The Omnipod 5 is an algorithm, right? It's making decisions about basal. It's making decisions about corrections. It's really something else. It's next level. Omnipod 5 or Omnipod DASH. Whatever you're looking for, if it's tubeless, if it's easy, it's Omnipod. Omnipod.com/juicebox. You head over there right now and check it out. You may actually be eligible for a free 30-day trial of the Omnipod DASH. You should ask and see. unless you want the Omnipod 5. And then I wouldn't do the Dash trial. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Get the insulin pump that my daughter has been wearing every day for 15 years. For full safety, risk information, and free trial terms and conditions, you can visit omnipod.com/juicebox. If you're like me and you like Erika, you can check her out at erikaforsyth.com or call her at 626-344-2266. Erika is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's got a brick and mortar store in California. I don't think therapists call their place a store, but she can also help you online if you're in California, Utah, Oregon, or Florida. She is really terrific. She has had type 1 for 30 years, helps a lot of people with type 1 diabetes. erikaforsyth.com. You know.
Yes. And in in-person communication, you're able to do reflective listening and say, I think this is what you're saying. Let me double check. Mm-hmm. Are you saying it this way or you're saying it that way? And then you have an opportunity to confirm or disagree.
Yeah.
Right. And then online, it's a little bit more challenging to communicate that way. But I do see people do that sometimes. Say, is this what you're trying to say? And that's such a beautiful way to say, hey, I'm reading, I hear you, I see you. Is this what you're trying to say? Mm-hmm. And that can often intervene and interrupt the conflict and the spiraling of attacks that happen.
Some of those are very good interviewing techniques too. Like my wife will joke, she'll say, and I don't know how much she's joking, she'll be like, sometimes I walk past that room and I think, who's that lovely man interviewing that person who seems to be very understanding and want to know more? And because that's what I'm doing for an hour when I'm talking to somebody. Like I'm trying to get how they feel. And there are times where I'm motivated to tell them how I feel or to offer up a parable that's like, hey, well, what about this? But in your regular life, it's difficult. And the longer I make this podcast, the better I get at being a real person away from this microphone, because you have to be interested in what the other person is saying. And it can't be judgmental. Like you can't be judging people while they're talking, because when you do, all that's happening is you're coming up with argumentative responses to while they're talking. They say something like, oh, that's wrong. I'll tell you, I know what's right here. I'm going to say this. It's not a fight. You're not trying to win. You know what I mean? You think something, they think something, you all say it. Nothing has to change. And I think that's one of the misconceptions is that every one of these interactions somehow needs to end with the other person changing their mind. And that's not how things work. You're offering up an idea. It'll get planted in their head as a seed and may or may not grow. And that's all you can do. You can't run around changing people's minds. Good information. Give them your best information and see, if they don't pick some of it up. I don't know. Makes sense.
Yes. And I think that, we are passionate, particularly in, how we live our lives, the choices we make, how we choose to manage not only diabetes, but our lifestyles. And if it's working for you, I see and hear the passion in the comments, right? And you want to say, this is how it's working for me. And I want you to be able to see it and feel it and live it this way too. So I think oftentimes the intent and the motivation behind some of the stronger comments is because you're passionate and it's working for you.
Yeah.
And you want other people to, quote, see the light. But oftentimes people aren't ready to hear that. And if you aren't recognizing that maybe the tone is too strong, it's just going to land flat.
Yeah. And what you lack, I'll tell you what, like making a podcast, all I'm doing is sharing how we're managing my daughter's diabetes, right? And I mean, it's gotten bigger than that, but at its core, that's what it is. I don't hear back from people. Like I say my thing and I go, all right, listen, here's what I think. You don't need to think it if you don't, I don't care, but here's what I think. You can't do that in a face-to-face or screen-to-screen conversation, because you say something and then they fire back, and everyone's always trying to be, either you're in a good conversation where everybody's being like light and supportive and thoughtful, or you're in a crappy conversation where everyone's trying to win, get a dig in, be funny. That's the other thing. a lot of you are not as funny as you think you are. Like, I mean, God bless you. I'm probably not as funny as I think I am, but I'm a lot funnier than a lot of you. And so like, but there's levels of that too. Like, or that your humor doesn't land, or how hard it is to write sarcasm. There's so many things, but I really do take your point about the passion, because I think that's at the core of any low carb argument I've ever seen in my life. It's just people are like, I found this thing that really helps me. I'm trying to tell you about it. You're not listening. You're killing yourself. I know. And then somebody else will come in and say, well, I found a way to manage with insulin perfectly fine. And my A1C and yours are exactly the same. And so you don't understand. You're telling me I'm wrong. Nobody wants to be told they're wrong. Nobody wants to be told that they're doing something wrong or thinking about something incorrectly. And there are only certain trusted voices that get away with pointing that stuff out. And for the most part, it's not a thing we can just willy-nilly do between strangers, or even sometimes, I don't know, even sometimes people you know really well. I actually think that's harder. I always think about, I grew up watching my son play baseball. And if your kid's pitching and they're struggling, you don't send the father out to talk to them on the mound. You send somebody else who doesn't have a lot of history with them and, isn't quietly angry about something that happened a week and a half ago in the house and stuff like that. So anyway, I don't know. What do you think about all this?
Well, I think that oftentimes it might feel easier to express our passionate opinion online. I mean, we talk to our children, our teenagers about, being aware of online bullying and trolling. And I think one of the things that I constantly tell children is, what would you say this? Would you write this out? What you want to write online, would you say that in person to that friend? Would you write that post? Would you write that comment if that person was standing right in front of you? And I think when we're in the heat of the moment and we're on our phone and we're running around and we're reading the thread and we just want to put our 2 cents in, I think it's so easy to get caught up in the moment. But just to think, okay, these are a bunch of people I may have never met before, but if they were all standing in my living room, would I be
say this?
Would I say this and in this way? And that's a hard thing to remember in the moment. I totally understand.
I just got back from a trip where I was gone for like 11 days. This is like the one time this year I didn't make the podcast for a week, and other people helped me with the Facebook group more than they usually do, and I wasn't looking at it as much. But I posted before I left. I was like, I'm leaving. I'm going away with my family. Hold all your crazy inside till I get back, please.
I read that.
Okay. And in that time, and this is such an interesting thing to break down. A person made a post. It was a meme about Plan B, and Plan B, the pill, like, the day after.
Oh.
Right. And for the life of me, I don't even know why it was funny. Like, but people told me it was. I was like, all right. But when they put it up, it's easy to think, oh, well, this is to stir up the pot, but it wasn't. They really just thought, this is funny. And then it was diabetes related somehow. I forget how. And I saw it go up because one of the moderators reported it so I could see it, just so I could see it. And now I see it and I'm like, oh, well, this isn't going to go well. And my first thought is like, how does the poster not know that? How does the person who puts it up not know at some point this is going to go poorly, that this is going to turn into an abortion conversation online, right? And then, but I always take the tact of like, let them be adult. Like they're adults, let them do what they want, as long as nobody's mean or blah, blah, blah. But man, it just went exactly like you thought. 4 out of 5 people got the joke and they were okay with it and weren't put off by it. And some people took it as an opportunity to say, oh no, I have feelings about this. I'm going to share them with you now. And then other people come back in and share the opposite side. And then here we go. And I think 2 things. As the person who runs a large group, I think, how did you not know this was going to happen? Because I don't think the person had that intention. And my other thing is, this group takes in 300 new members a week. Like, wow. Okay. So 40, 50 people a day come in. I don't want them seeing you ranting and raving about plan B on day one, because they're going to think that's what this is about. And the truth is that's not true at all. Like, that one post is meaningless on a group that size. That group gets 110 new posts a day on average.
Wow.
Okay. And so most people aren't even going to see the stupid post, but the algorithm sees people going back and forth and says, aha, people care about this, and start pushing it towards other people's posts. And now suddenly, in my mind, everyone who's been there knows Scott takes care of this stuff. This bullshit doesn't go on here. I'm not worried about it. But those new people might think, oh, where am I? What asylum am I in right now? You know?
Right.
Because I don't think people understand, no matter what side of an argument you're on, you sound crazy.
And it just feels like that. I mean, that's probably not the place to have that type of conversation.
Yeah.
But I understand how and why it happens, and perhaps, you know, the person who posted it is a quick-witted, funny person, sarcastic, and thought this would be a funny, you know, response to your post.
Yeah. And then here we go.
But didn't pause to think about how is this going to land. And that's how it does happen, but obviously not probably ill-intended originally.
I'm thinking back now on it. I think there was like candy, the Plan B pill, and something else. And the idea was like, be prepared. And like, so I think they thought like the candy, like low blood sugars, and like these things.
Okay. Yeah.
But still, you're just like, oh dear Lord, like this is like, if you had to run, what I thought was, if you had to run this page for a day, you would never do that. And not because I don't want the place to be fun or free-minded. I absolutely, you should see the stuff I don't get involved in, because I really do think people are adults and they should do what they want. But like, I don't know, like, so when you go back to a regular conversation, that big kind of blown up idea, it's the same thing. When you're talking to your sister and you're trying to get something across, it's not a good place to bring up something that happened 10 years ago, unless you're trying to be in an argument with your sister, right? And in that case, I say, just be more honest. Just look at her and go, I'm still mad at you for the thing that happened 10 years ago. Let's talk, because that might actually get you somewhere. I don't know. I don't understand why, you know, I keep hearing it broken down as people are like tribal or on teams, and I don't even think it's that. Like, I just think that people have a collection of thoughts and they defend them like very vociferously. Like, they defend their thoughts because I think they think their thoughts are them. But your thoughts, like your ideas about, I don't know, politics, that's not really who you are. That's your thoughts about politics. And I think it gets commingled, and then you feel like you're defending yourself all of a sudden, you know?
Yes. And I hear people who respond that when there's been other, you know, controversial topics that have come up within the Facebook group, you know, people can say, well, you can choose not to read them or not to participate, turn off your phone, you know, and I think those are all, if you are finding that you are reading some of the posts and having, you know, a visceral response or, you know, feeling offended, check in with yourself of how you're feeling. And is it appropriate to respond back online? Do you need to go take care of yourself in another way? And just to be mindful of that, like maybe it does feel personal, right. And maybe you need to process that. And it might not be the best way to process it online. But again, I know these are really hard steps to take if kind of your automatic thought and action is to respond back.
Right. Yeah. This just might not be a setting that's right for you in this moment. And I mean, from the outside, that's why I'm trying to have this conversation, because there's two reactions. There's the like flippant, like human reaction, like just leave if you don't, like if it bothers you. But you're not putting yourself in their position where they're like, you've now just lit off every synopsis in their, you know, I'm using the wrong word. Like you're firing their brain up. You're like, oh my God, this is promoting something that I think is wholly wrong. Or, you know, I have to say something now. I'm the defender of everyone who they imagine is going to see it. And even that's a funny thing about the internet. Everyone's not seeing what you think they're seeing. There was this thing years ago when the diabetes space moved into Twitter at first. I think it's been long enough now. I can make fun of people for this. So there were diabetes people that got on Twitter, and they would have these like interactions online. Then later they would report back, my tweet got 1.3 million impressions. And I'm like, 1.3 million people read your tweet? You've got 2,000 followers. What are we talking about? You know? And then you realize that they take the 2,000 number. I have 2,000 followers. And each one of those followers has the amount of followers they have. So we'll assume that their followers saw it too. So my tweet could have been seen by 1.3 million people.
Okay.
And then they'd run around espousing that that was their reach. And I think people believe that. Now, I, as a person who puts content in the world, can tell you that if it was that easy to reach 1.3 million people, I'd be sitting on a gold chair in a gold room right now. And I am not. Okay. So it's not that easy to reach people. You are not talking to as many people as you think you are. And when you post something that gets 100 likes on it, I want you to know 100 is a very small number. You know, there are billions of people on the planet. And you're in a group with 40,000 people, and you got confirmation from 100 of them. You have statistically reached none of them. But people have this feeling online like my voice is carrying and I'm impacting people. And I don't think people realize they're not. I have a huge reach online and I am not impacting as many people as you think I am. So you on your private Facebook group are talking to yourself and your old neighbor and some guy from high school. So good luck. I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like if that, and maybe people do find, you know, we know that people find value in numbers or they impart that they are valuable based on how many likes, how many reposts, how many, you know, shares. And if that is where you find value, that's okay. But also conversely, you are valuable. I would say, you know, just that you're valuable even without all of those likes, and perhaps maybe kind of reevaluate what are you saying and why, and what are you getting out of it?
Yeah. I don't mean to say that they're wrong. I mean to say that they're not changing the world the way they think they are. We have a whole generation of kids who think they're advocates because they have an Instagram. Like, you're not helping anyone. Good, nice try. Like your post that reached 500 people is not going to change a company. I know you think it's going to. It isn't going to. But it doesn't mean your thoughts are wrong, or that you shouldn't live your life that way, teach your children that way, speak to people that way, or that what you're saying is not incredibly valuable. Like you just, I mean, think of all the good things in the world that we can all agree with. Clean water. This is a great example, right? Yeah. We all know that's okay. How come it doesn't happen? I mean, you all have an Instagram. Have you not said something about it? How come the people in Flint, Michigan aren't swimming in great? It's because that's not how this works. And but people get stuck in the idea, especially now that social media is in everybody's hand. They're like, I have real power here. And you have power within your own life, you know, and you can, I hate to say this, like act locally and maybe that will grow, but I don't know. There was that one moment in social media where you could scare a company in 2 seconds. You could have a bad vacation or something, and you could get on Twitter and go, hey, you guys, you know, blah, 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 blah. And the company would literally like find you and call you and be like, we're so sorry. If you take that tweet down, we will like this. Now they don't even do that anymore. Like, I don't know how to tell you, like most companies, the way most companies handle people who are upset with them online is just ignore it away. They don't really do anything about it. And how is that how is that what happens? That's what happens because what they learned is your tweet, your Facebook thing, your Instagram thing, it really doesn't hit hard enough to make a problem for them. So
the ripple effect isn't as significant
as you think it is. And so while you're busy online or in your own family, ranting and raving about something, you've really just kind of sullied the relationship you have with these these close people who are with you, these 50 people who saw your post, or these 7 or 8 people in a room with you. You're not You're not doing what you think you're doing, but you could be. And that's what we talked about earlier. You absolutely could be impacting people differently if you found a better way to deliver what you were saying. And I hope people think about that, like the delivery method, you know.
And I think in that delivery, and I see people do this in the threads as well, is remind, if it gets kind of out of hand and out of control, someone will come in, you know, either the peacemaker or the reminder of like, well, let's go back to the topic. Let's go to the first post, because it's really easy to get caught up in the discussion, and it's the very first point or question or comment is lost. And so that would be maybe something helpful to do as well. If you're wanting to engage in a conversation or comment, go back to the original post to see, you know, what was this person asking? And I think, we've talked about this before as well, is when you are the first poster in a comment, or asking for, be very clear with what you're needing as well, because sometimes it is venting, sometimes it is seeking, you know, clarification or seeking questions. And you could even lead with that, like just looking for some validation, or really looking for some new ideas on how to treat lows in this specific area of my child's life. You know,
it's all very doable as well. Like you have to be patient, and listen, take it from me. My Facebook group is one of the largest groups for diabetes in Facebook. And it is easily one of the most active, if not the most active one. And it's also what most people describe as a nice situation to be.
Yes.
I did that on purpose. I built that way on purpose. And then I introduced other things. I have blended together people who eat all different kinds of ways in one diabetes Facebook group. Not seen anywhere else. There's low carb, there's vegetarian based diet. Not me. I'm like, you got diabetes? Forget type 1 or type 2. You come on in here. I don't give a crap how you eat. You're allowed to talk in here. I brought type 2s together with type 1s. And nobody's done that. I've been around this space for 20 years. People wouldn't say type 1 and type 2 diabetes in the same sentence, let alone the same paragraph, because what were they afraid of? Type 1s would say, well, I don't want to be categorized as type 2 because those people did it to themselves, which isn't even true. And then the type 2s would be like, well, I don't want to be about them. They use insulin. They're really sick. That's the bad kind. Like then they start using words like the bad kind of diabetes or this one, like insanity.
The worst kind. Yeah.
That was prevalent and still is, not in my space. Because I set it up not to be that way. I set expectations. People follow those expectations. When people fall outside of the line of them, I don't ban their account. I go right in public. I respond back. I don't DM anybody. You try to DM me, you're not hearing back from me. I'm not getting involved in your crazy yelling and screaming. But online, I'll say, listen, here's what I'm seeing. You seem like you are very passionate about this, and I think this might be why. Is that right? But can you also see that this person seems very passionate about it too? And I think they have their own reasons. And you guys can share information with each other without yelling at each other, without telling each other you're wrong, because you're both right. And this conversation's important. And then people will come by and say, well, are you going to delete it? I'm not going to delete it. It's valuable. And the other thing you don't realize is that the 10 or 20 or 50 people that are commenting in a post are, again, the very small minority of people who are actually seeing it. And most people, it's sort of like talking about politics. We focus on the right and the left, and we ignore everybody in the middle who basically agrees. And that happens online too. Like the people who, don't think of it as right and left, but from, polar opposite perspectives. And mostly everybody's like, oh, that lady makes a good point, but she's a little weird. And that guy makes a good point, but I don't like the way he said it. And by the way, that's also very much something I've noticed too, is that men can be taken as harsh when they're not being harsh. And I used to be I used to communicate in curt language, but not curt and bad, just short and factual and to the point. Right. And you can read it as shitty. And guess what I did?
How rude.
Yes. Yeah. Guess what I did? I stopped writing like that because I wanted people to hear what I was saying. I knew I didn't mean anything bad by it. And there'd be other men that would come in and say, no, you're misunderstanding him. He's saying this. And they'd be like, well, that's not how it makes me feel. And I'll tell you, that's a frustrating thing to hear. To hear that you've said something to you is a very clear and concise way, but that another person heard it and it made them upset. I'm upset by that. Like, oh my God, I made you upset. Like, I'm just trying to like lay this out factually and get out of here, because I don't have a lot of time to sit and like, I'm the guy making the podcast. I'm kind of busy. And it's like, so like, I'm trying to come in and say a thing, and I don't know. Like, so what I learned was, I'm not writing to communicate exactly what I think when my brain says the words. I'm writing to communicate what I feel and what I'm trying to impart and the bigger picture. It's just, you turn into a teacher when you're communicating that way, I guess.
And over time, you have learned and practiced that, right? You have developed that skill. It is a skill to communicate authentically to a broader audience who can understand what you're saying and receive it. Yeah. It is a learned skill.
It took me a long time to build it up to where it is. And I'm still not great, like amazing at it, but I'm much, much better at when I started. And also, like, you've probably seen, like, once or twice a year, somebody will get out of hand. I get angry about certain things. I don't like companies selling their crap to people and that kind of stuff, and people trying to slip in links to things. And if I get upset about that, and I will like be more authoritative when I come back, but I'm between you, me, and everybody who's listening. That's the razor's edge of my anger. Like, if I let my whole anger out, you'd be like, oh my God. And so like, and I'm articulate and know how to write and how to communicate. Like, I could be piercing if I wanted to be. Like, I could knock you over out of your chair if I wanted to be. I don't want to do that. That's not my intention or my desire or my thought, but I don't know that intention, desire, and thought gets involved when people are arguing. I think they just reach down as far into their bag of horror as they can, pull out a handful of it and throw it forward. And I guess that's a different consideration, right? Like, when you aren't actually interested in communicating, you actually are interested in hurting somebody. When you see that, just ignore it. And and I'll tell you too, from a lot of experience, those people, they come around eventually, some of them, but most of them disappear before they come around. And just telling your Facebook feed, like, I don't want to see from that person, it might be a good idea, you know?
Yes, you can set obviously emotional and physical boundaries around people in your life like that, and online. Yeah. And I will say, you know, conversely, going back to the point, the community that you have created, from when I do read lots of threads, the majority are kind and supportive.
Oh, yeah.
And will advocate and intervene when it feels like things are spiraling, you know, other members.
Oh, I see them like self-manage the threads.
Self-manage, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's why it has been such a success, and why people do feel safe and supported and go there for support, ideas, interventions.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to give the impression that it's like the Wild West. Like, I mean, I don't know the exact number, but overwhelmingly 99.9% of that group is just lovely people helping each other. But every once in a while, someone's like, hey, you shouldn't eat this. And I'm like, and even I've quelled. It took me 2 years to get out we do not tell people how to eat. Like, if you do not tell people how to eat in this group, it took me 2 years, and I'm telling you, it's good now. Like, we fixed it. Like, it runs smoothly.
It's been normalized that, you know, you can eat the way you want to eat, but you don't have to, you know, inform and advocate others to do the same.
Yeah. You don't have to. And by the way, because there's no good way to do it. Like, what are you going to say to somebody? You don't think they know? You know, oh, your genius is going to like turn the light on over their head. They know. They got a hand in the Dorito bag. They're upset with themselves. They already know. They're like, I shouldn't be doing this. And here it is. It's happening anyway. You coming along and telling them how you went low carb, and look at me and pulling up your shirt and showing your abs and stuff like that. I ain't helping anybody. You know, I've also changed the flow of how people think about about celebrating successes with their diabetes. that used to be a very frowned upon thing in the group. I've always maintained that people's success should act as hope and guidance, and that you need them to come up and say, hey, look what I did. I used to be a 7.5. I'm a 5.2 now. I think you should see that and think, I might be able to do that too. I don't just think you should think that. I offer you episodes to listen to so that you can go try to accomplish that on your own. And I don't know how many people who would have accepted unhealthy lives are now living better because of that. And that is the thing that the diabetes community in general stood firmly behind not doing for years. Never tell people if you're doing well. Don't show them a good graph. Don't show them a good number. You're going to make them feel bad. And I thought, why can't we make them feel hopeful? So
yes, I love that reframe, so that if you are listening to this now and you're seeing somebody say, my A1C went from, a 9 to a 6 or whatever it is, that if you see that and feel either ashamed or hopeless, that's also feedback to say, okay, what do you need to do? Do you need help managing the diabetes? Do you need help with your thoughts and emotions and how you're seeing that data? But that it is the motivation behind sharing that is hope and not to shame.
That's why I ask people to leave reviews of the podcast, because then I can use them in social media. Like when you come along, you say, I'm 53 years old and I've had diabetes for 25 years. And I started listening to this podcast last year and this, and this has happened now. That's amazing. Like I'm reading a note right before you and I got on from a type 2 who was like, thank you for making this type 2 pro tip series. I've been up all night listening to this, and you have exactly encapsulated how I feel and all the guilt and the shame that I have from this. And I'm going to do a better, like that kind of stuff. Like that's big stuff. But you'll notice I didn't do it by getting online and going, who rows the boat? You row the boat. Go for a run. You don't. Yeah. Like I noticed this the other day. Do you have time, or am I going to take you?
Yes.
Okay.
No, we're good. We're good.
Okay. It occurred to me the other day, in the last 5 or 6 years, podcasts from very healthy, fit, often like military guys have become incredibly popular. Like they're very, very popular. And I am not saying by any stretch of the imagination that exercising is not what you should be doing. We should all be exercising, and probably a lot of us more than we are. My point is, with the popularity of all this stuff, how come I don't see people getting thinner? Why don't I see people healthier? Why don't I see more guys running around 10 miles a day? Like, yes, it's interesting to listen to, and it might feel very motivational, but if a year and a half later, you still have 30 pounds to lose, then the guy screaming and yelling at you in the podcast didn't help you. Made you feel better for a little while because you're like, ooh, I'm going to do this. Except he can do it because it's his job. And you work at IBM and you're sitting on your ass for 9 hours and you can't go outside at 4 a.m. and go for a 20-mile run, right? Like, so I understand why they're popular, but I don't know why we don't stop back and look and go, yeah, but they're not really helping that many people. And, or else, I mean, that popularity should have shifted into mass change. And it didn't. They're reaching millions of people. And yet, every time I turn on the TV, that's not the case of what's going on, right? I've always taken that perspective with the podcast, which is it needs to help you. Not like that was one of my first founding thoughts about this. Like when I was writing a blog, I was like, it doesn't matter. Like I can't, like, yes, I can write a blog post and say, hey, my daughter's blood sugar was low at 2 a.m. and that sucked. And here's how I feel. And then other people see that and they go, oh, that happens to me too. And I know there's value in that. Like I absolutely do. But I just kept thinking like, wouldn't it be better if you weren't low at 2 a.m.? Like, why don't we get to that part? Why don't we start talking to people about how to actually, not what they should be doing or what the right thing to do would be, but a thing that would actually move them towards a better place. And that maybe they could then make their own motivation and their own force and so you don't need somebody yelling at you to get up and, I don't know, do whatever.
It might work for some people, but not most.
Yeah. And listen, I am also saying, I'm sure it's helped some people and God bless. Terrific. But you know, it didn't help me. And so like, and I think that there's a way, again, you're not just getting on and saying, do this. Like, here I am again today to tell you, these are the right things. If you do these things, you'll be okay, blah, blah. I tell a story. This is the story. of this lady and how it happened to her. And here's a guy that happened to him, and a little kid, and a mom, and a 50-year-old, and a 40-year-old, until you can hear so many stories that you think, I could be one of those people. I probably am one of those people. Like, what is it they're doing that I'm not doing? So my point again about talking to people is communication is not for telling people how to think. Communication is for sharing things, and then you hope that people take something from it. Whether it's in a one-on-one conversation or a guy with a podcast or a Facebook group. Anyway, people, I got this all figured out. If you just listen to me, you'd be okay.
You got all the tools.
Sure. It's just about how you talk to people. Now, if we have time, I'm going to transition into something else. And I'm just going to come right out and say it.
Okay.
All y'all who seem to get off online saying, I'm mad at people using a CGM who don't have diabetes, or you can't use a GLP-1 to lose weight because it's a type 2 medication, and you get all upset about it. I gotta say, you should stop. You know, like, it's just, it doesn't make any sense to me at all. If a person needs to lose weight and they need a medication to lose weight and it makes their life better, what do you care? If somebody wants to see their blood sugar so that they know the impact that grapes are having on them so that they can talk themselves into not eating grapes anymore, what do you care? Like I know everybody's like, well, there'll be a shortage. Like, stop it. There's not going to be a shortage. Pharma companies know how to make stuff that makes them money. They'll be okay. Okay. Maybe there was a moment where, you know, GLP-1s became like, you know, in the TikTok world and stuff like that, and the company got caught off guard. They're not going to get caught off guard again. They want to sell the drug to people who need it. That's their business. There's not going to be a shortage. There's not going to be a shortage of insulin. There's not going to be a shortage of Dexcoms or Libres because Dexcom and Abbott sell CGMs. And if you want to buy more CGMs, they want to sell you more CGMs. Okay, like there might be a moment where there's an ebb or a flow, but if you've been listening to this podcast for years, the CEO of Dexcom's been on here saying, like, we started with type 1s, and then we want to get Medicare and Medicaid because that's a pathway to insurance understanding what it does for people. And then once they understand what it does for people, we want to get it for type 2s.
That's right.
And then they're going to want pre-diabetes. And then guess what? Now you help eliminate this illness for so many people. Like, why would you get online and rant and rave at somebody because they have a CGM? Is it because you can't afford it?
I feel like most of the time is maybe fear of what scarcity of the product, which, you know, that was there for a little bit for one of the drugs. Yeah. But I do agree that these companies want to make money, and so they will figure out a way to prevent that from happening again. But I think it's often fear when we lash out and criticize other people's choices. It's often because we are scared. We're not certain of how their actions are they going to affect me personally down the line, and maybe you really have a personal opinion and feel like it's the use is improper or ineffective. But I'm not sure, going back to, is online communication the best forum for that? Probably not. Also,
you scare people into stopping saying their story. Like I think, you know, Jenny and I just recorded a type 2 episode this morning about GLP-1s and other medications you'll use for type 2. And I said, I get why people are like, I hear you. I know that some people have like a famine mentality and they think, oh my God, it's going to be gone. Like, I mean, one of the most popular conversations online is like, what if the zombies come? Where am I getting insulin from? You're not, but the zombies aren't coming. You're okay. You know, like, they're going to keep making it. And so I said to Jenny, I'm behind people getting on TikTok and saying like, hey, look, I stuck this thing in my leg. And I started doing it last year, and I'm 70 pounds lighter, and my life is better, and I am healthier, because then other people who feel stigmatized will go, all right, well, that lady put a video up of herself. I would never have let somebody see me like this, but look at her now. Like, this is terrific. You know, like, I think I may have come out and said, I think everybody that needs to lose 40 pounds ought to get this drug. Like, imagine where the world would be a year from now if everybody who had 40 pounds to lose had lost it and felt better about themselves and was healthier and didn't need heart replacement.
Yeah, all the side complications.
I mean, just forget financially. How about happiness? What if those people their hunger was all satiated for whatever reason? Like, maybe some of them had crap parents and maybe some of their brains just tell them to eat and like anywhere in between. But if an entire generation of people could let that go, then their kids would grow up with a better understanding of how to fuel their bodies. Then maybe this would, so stop being so scared of everything all the time. And I said, I hope type 2s start jumping up and going, hey, here's my Mounjaro or my Ozempic. And instead of showing me their weight loss, show me your A1C coming down and your stability happening and like, you know, back to your life and that kind of stuff. Like, I don't think hiding or forcing people to stop talking is the right way to do this. And you don't know what's going to happen or what good might come from some personal trainer wearing a CGM or, you know, my brother wearing it, or because he's got type 2 and his doctor says, well, you know, it's not covered for this yet, or like your insurance won't cover it or something like that. Like, you want to normalize this stuff to help people. Like, you have no idea what good places it might go. And instead it's right back to, I'm the world. I'm the center of this conversation. There's a person who has a thing I don't have. It's not fair. It's not right. And I need it. And therefore they shouldn't have it. Those two things are not connected to each other. Like your lack of financial ability or the deficit you have with your health insurance, if you have health insurance, or that you don't have health insurance or whatever, it doesn't have anything to do with that person. It's not like if they don't buy it, the company's going to mail it to you for free. That's not happening. I get the feeling. I understand the anger. I understand all of it.
And the pain, right? Like, I want that, but I can't afford it. Or I want that for my whole family to experience CGM, but how do we do that? I mean, they're experiencing pain, right? In those moments.
100%. It's a horror. Like, and I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying going online and railing against that person, they're not going to stop using the CGM or the GLP-1 or whatever you're yelling about. They're just going to stop talking about it. And then imagine if I didn't start telling people how we manage my daughter's blood sugars. Like like do that. Okay. Like, imagine that which by the way happened to me, but I pushed through it. Imagine I started speaking up about how we managed Arden's insulin. And someone was to have said to me, maybe this is a direct quote, "You can't tell people how you manage your daughter's insulin because it's dangerous." And I went, I don't agree with you. Shut up. And then I didn't listen to that person. But what if I did? What if I just went, oh, yeah, okay. The show's got over 11 million downloads now. It's getting 500,000 a month, right? Like, it's touching places like you just can't imagine. And it's and the notes come constantly about my A1C, my variability, back to running. I had a baby. You have any idea how many people call me to tell me I am the reason they had a baby? I don't get to have sex with any of America, but they call me. Okay. And, oh my God. And I'm just saying, like, don't stop some middle-aged person on TikTok from showing you how their weight loss is going. Because you don't know where this is going to go. And I don't see why it's a bad thing. Like, listen, I told Jenny, I'll say it to you too. I understand the diet, you know, better fueling, exercise, like this is the key. But I don't know how long a person's got to live where that's not helping. And then society ends up telling you, well, they're a lost cause. And so we write them off and we'll just get the next generation. But that doesn't happen. Because now I'm hearing that kids are getting type 2 diabetes and, you know, and obesity in children is going up. It's a weird thing to look at people like products coming off an assembly line and going, oh, that one didn't work, throw it away. The next one will be, oh no, that one's worse, throw it away. No one ever goes back and looks at the assembly line. They're just like, oh, no, just keep throwing. We'll keep the good ones, get rid of the bad ones. Keep the good ones, get rid of the bad ones. They're people, for fucking Christ's sake. You know what I mean? They're not Cadbury eggs. Like they're people. You just, by the way, you could still eat a Cadbury egg if it had like a split out of it. But, and I don't know that people see it that way, but I do. You yell and scream that somebody shouldn't be wearing a CGM. You are silencing them. And you are stopping a potential benefit from coming for other people. And maybe, and this would be terrible, maybe you shame them out of using it. And that would be horrible. So I understand why you feel that way. But I mean, from my perspective, you sound silly when you're saying it. You do. Your argument is not the argument. If you can't afford it, that's an argument. Should it be cheaper? That's an argument.
Yeah.
Should insurance companies cover it? That's an argument. Other people shouldn't get it. That I don't understand. Like, so I don't know. Maybe there's a reason I don't get, but I just think shine a light on everything and let the good stuff rise to the top and see what happens. I'm sorry. I talked way too
Yes. No, well, I think that just, going back to why do we make comments about certain things? Going back to just the beginning of either we're passionate, we want to convince others about our opinion. We feel threatened or scared or excited. And we want to share.
Yeah.
And I think just constantly trying to apply that, the filter or the lens of how is this going to land with the viewer or the reader. And just try to check yourself. Again, I know it's just check yourself sounds so easy. But just constantly applying the filter. And I think it'll be, and even it's already a safe place, the community, the Facebook community that you've created, but it could be even safer through that practice, which I think would be awesome.
Well, that's terrific. And while I'm busy saying things that people aren't going to like, let me just add this. When you argue that they have type 2 and I have type 1, we're not the same and they can't be here, that sounds the same to me. It sounds absolutely ridiculous to me. I've had that said to me. I've received emails that said, I see you're doing type 2 content. Stop it. You keep this podcast type 1. I don't know what that means. Like, meanwhile, a lady with type 2 wrote me the other day and said, I asked for a C-peptide test and the doctor said, I don't understand. Like, how would your management change? Like, you're using insulin. We think you're type 2, but you're using insulin. How would your management change if you knew you were type 1? And that person said, well, then I would think it wasn't my fault. And so I see that. But at the same time, type 2, type 1, it's still not your fault. Like, we can dig into it, but food's been going wrong for about 7 decades now. And we've been pushed into more processed, higher carb, higher sugar stuff that tells your brain you're hungry, you're hungry, you're hungry. And then somebody ends up with insulin resistance and pre-diabetes. And we go, oh, they did it themselves. You're out of your mind. Like everybody who talks like that is full of shit. That's all. There are 5 people who actually have go out and buy spinach and make it with a half a piece of chicken and don't put any oil on it and then go for a 10-mile run. And the rest of you are full of shit. Okay. So that's that. And I think it's one of those like, well, they did it to themselves. It's not about them. It's about you not wanting to wonder how it happened to you. Right. Like I don't see a difference between that argument and when somebody tried to tell me 10 years ago that, Hurricane Katrina, people who were trapped by Hurricane Katrina, they just didn't work hard enough and that's why they couldn't get away from it. I'm like, you're out of your mind. Like, you don't understand generational poverty if you're talking like that.
That's right.
Yeah. And so anyway, I don't know.
I feel like that's, we could talk about this, the topic between type 1 and type 2 and the shame involved in that and how, even 32 years ago when I was almost 33, when I was diagnosed, it was juvenile versus adult onset. And then it became more type 1 and type 2. And even in my generation as a little girl, I remember being told, well, you don't have type 2. This, and then that became my narrative, like, oh, it's type 1. It's not the kind that I brought on myself, but that line, and I still do hear that, because there's fear, there's shame, but that doesn't help either community of type 1 or type 2, right? In that mindset.
Yeah.
And that in neither group or subset within the type 1, let's talk about the LADA, there's so many different groups within the diabetes umbrella that none of us want it. And we still don't really even know why we all have it, but no one did it to themselves.
Well, I to that, I say, people, you got to think bigger. Like you got to think bigger. Like, stop looking at things so like micro, like, oh, this is this. And I got the bad and you got the good. Like, that's crazy. Like, type 1s, there are some type 1s who are starting to use those GLP-1 medications and they're helping them. And Jenny told me about somebody who's using 10 units a day less insulin on a GLP-1 and insulin. They're looping with a GLP-1. Okay. And almost like 15 or 20% of their daily insulin's gone down, and they're losing weight. And by the way,
wow.
That drug was for type 2s. So say thank you. Like don't, like, what do you, I always say when people give me crap online, I'm like, I would prefer if you just said thank you and went away, but this is fun too. But my point is, you don't know what's going to come of these things. And they might end up helping you. And I'll tell you right now, if it becomes the common practice that type 1s do a once a week injection and insulin, and their A1Cs are all magically in the 5s, and they're eating more of the foods they want, and they're not gaining weight and blah, blah, because they're not eating a ton of stuff for lows all the time.
To correct, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, then am I going to hear a bunch of apologies? I don't think so.
I know, that all sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah, is the lady who wrote me going, don't let these type 2s in here, is she going to go, oh, my fault? Like, no. Like, so you sound silly is what I'm saying. Like, just stop. Like, just in a sentence, just want for everybody else what you want for yourself. That's all. Just want everybody to be okay or better or happy or whatever is going to do it for them. And why do you care how they get to it? That's the part I don't understand. Like, just why do you have an opinion about this? And not for nothing, you can take that sentence and apply it to basically everything that people argue about. And you be okay. Everybody's going to have a reason. Like, oh, I'm defending this or I'm defending that or God told me or whatever the hell they're going to say. But in the end, it's not you. Like, it's not your life. Just, I don't know, let it be. It's a good song. You should go listen to it.
I like that. Let it be.
I mean, my God. All right. What did I not say? What did I do wrong? Go ahead, tell me now. This is
No, I think we covered it. I think in essence, I think our goal was to, just want everyone to get along. Just, I think communicate effectively, communicate authentically, and communicate with compassion. And living that way, you'll feel better about yourself too, and the way you communicate with others.
And I'll tell you too, not having a victim mentality is pretty helpful too, because often the conversation you find yourself in is as much your doing as it is someone else's. And instead of saying this person did this, or they said that, or they made me upset, you might want to look at why that is, because there are plenty of people who can hear things and go on without crumbling and screaming and everything else. And it's not always someone else's fault. Like, I'm not saying you can't run into somebody who's an absolute prick and like, just be like, wow, what the hell, but we've gotten to the point now where people are like, you did this to me. I'm like, I don't know. Like, come on. Anyway, this will be fun. I can't wait to lose a bunch of listeners over this one. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. I also want to thank Omnipod and remind you that you can learn all about it and get started at omnipod.com/juicebox. Check out the Dash, check out the Omnipod 5, omnipod.com/juicebox. And of course, Erika is at erikaforsyth.com. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.